Either there is a law that requires them to go electric, or there's customers that ask them to go electric or they will not place the order, or it is cheaper to drive electric than with fossil.
If you filled up your car with gasoline or diesel in the past couple of months, I can guess it wasn't exactly a pleasant experience. And for the operators of large logistics fleets, high prices are having a major impact on business operations. Welcome to the Smartery podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Gifford. It's been a recurring theme on the pod over the past couple of months, the impacts of the war in the Middle East and disrupted oil and gas supply chains on our energy system. And when it comes to commercial mobility, think trucks, buses and fleets, the second energy crisis this decade may very well be a game changer for electrification. We're heading to one of the giants of electrical infrastructure on the podcast today to explore the shift and meeting with Marcel Rümenapf from Siemens eMobility, who's working firsthand with commercial fleet owners as they make the switch from molecules to electrons for their operations. If you're listening to or watching the Smartery podcast for the first time, please do subscribe, follow, and leave a rating or review. And as always, you can get in touch with us at podcast@thesmartery.com. Well, we're very much in the depths of the second energy crisis this decade, and it means a big drive towards e-mobility and electrification right across the economy. So there's no better time to come to Siemens here in Berlin, and I'm joined by Marcel Rümenapf, who is the head of sales for eMobility Europe here at Siemens. Marcel, thank you for joining the Smartery podcast.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm talking about, I mentioned straight away, the energy crisis. Are you seeing a kind of uptick in demand as companies, as consumers turn to e-mobility to reduce their energy costs?
What we definitely see is an increase in interest, and that usually comes before the demand. What has been driving the whole topic of e-mobility in the past has always been the idea about sustainability and being green, which is extremely important. But what we have not really had in the discussion was the topic about fossil fuels and how dependent we are on other countries and on basically a limited resource, which a fossil fuel is. So with electrification, we have the chance to produce ourselves with renewables. And make ourselves somewhat independent from imports from others and optimize our cost. And that is now a full new view on the topic, driving it even further.
Well, it's funny actually, but just a couple of weeks ago, we were in Brussels for the Solar Power Summit that was hosted by Solar Power Europe. And there was Dan Jurgensen, the EU Energy Commissioner, and a whole heap of other speakers from the IEA, from other think tanks and analysts. And we're talking a lot about the need for renewables, but what they weren't talking about was decarbonization at any point. It was all about security of supply and reducing energy costs. So it seems like with this second crisis in a short period, that these two drivers are really taking over from decarbonization.
Absolutely, and it's good. I mean, it's important. It's good that we're having this discussion. It's good that we, have this experience, because I believe this will not be the last energy crisis we're seeing. So we should be prepared. We should work on our resilience.
Well, that means individual households, as I mentioned when we were speaking right at the start, but it also means businesses, right? And when you're talking about reducing energy costs, this is something that businesses are looking at every day. How can they increase efficiency, reduce costs? Do you expect households or businesses along with households to also be considering to make this switch?
Absolutely. It's let's say a household is a little bit on a smaller scale. If we think about businesses, it's a very professional approach towards cost optimization, towards the full total cost of ownership. What are levers to improve? How can I be better, more efficient, and be more competitive in a competitive market environment? Where electrification plays a big role, especially, maybe that's already a little bit in advance, but especially when we think about logistics and transportation, where margins are extremely slim and optimization is absolutely essential to play in the game.
Yeah, well, when we're talking businesses, like you said, logistics is a huge lever to pull in terms of decarbonization and also electrification. But many companies have big fleets of passenger vehicles as well. This is an area that you've been working in for some time. Just what are the challenges to companies making this decision to make this switch?
There are many aspects that need to be considered in doing this switch. You need to make sure that the people that you actually want to change their behavior are onboarded and are fully supporting the idea of changing. And change is always a little bit, let's say, bringing challenges. So what you want to make sure is that it's most convenient and that things simply work. You need to make sure that when you think about electrification, you think about charging. Where do these vehicles charge? Do I have them charge on my own premise at work? Do I have them charge somewhere out on the streets in the public domain? Do I let them charge at their houses? How do I handle then the cost reimbursement for the energy that has been charged and paid? How do I make sure the authentication works, that only the people that are allowed to charge also do charge and get the energy? So it's a whole ecosystem that needs to be implemented and that needs to be thought through from the beginning. Once you have that figured out, then the question is, okay, how many chargers can I actually install? How many vehicles can I actually charge? Where's the sweet spot between investing and operating? And how do I manage afterwards to make sure that, again, my investment and then my cost of operation at the end, after 10, 15 years, this all figures out and I have a positive cost or total cost of ownership balance.
Now, and for a business owner then, there's advantages kind of baked in a little bit, because previously, if you had a fleet of vehicles, you didn't really have much control about energy costs, right? These vehicles are going to go and refuel at just petrol stations that are out and about. Now you've got the possibility for on-site charging, where you do have control over your energy costs. Is that a significant advantage?
It brings chances. So it's in the past, exactly as you said, if I'm a smaller business, well, then I just go to the gas station, I fill up whatever the price is. I might have some kind of mobility service provider in between. Maybe there's some kind of special deals I can sign up. If I'm a bigger logistics company, maybe I even hedge my diesel fuel at large scale. But what's happening today, or the chance that's opening up when I electrify, well, I can have a dynamic electricity contract. And on days like today, where the sun is out or there's strong wind, we have a lot of renewables in the grid. Well, sometimes we have negative energy prices. And this is something that has never been possible with fossil fuels.
And of course, on-site generation as well. So it can become kind of part of a business's energy package.
Absolutely. So it's on one hand, I have these chances from the energy market. On the other hand, I can have my on-site generation via solar. Usually it's PV, solar or power photovoltaic. Some of them even bring wind turbines onto their premises, also interesting to see. And of course, battery storage, that I procure energy when it's cheap and that I use it when I need it. Yeah? And these are all possibilities that are there with electricity.
Well, we're going to talk about batteries in more detail soon, because it's really going to be a key enabler of e-mobility at scale. But let's turn to big kind of logistics fleets, moving large goods, big capital goods, or ongoing supply chains, moving them around the country, around Europe. How big an opportunity do you see this as being for e-mobility?
if we just look at the vehicle types that we see in the streets, and how electrification has been working so far. E-cars is something that is coming to the streets. Basically, Tesla enabled the e-car for the mass market, more or less. And then what we also did when we look at the more heavy-duty vehicles, the city buses, we started electrifying back in 2010 maybe, because it was rather easy to electrify because they go on a certain route. You know exactly the kind of energy that they will need, and you can then create the technical environment around it that it works. So electric city buses by today are I don't want to say, yeah, they are state of the art. So this is there. And what's now coming up is trucks. E-trucks, last mile deliveries have already been electrified. I live in Berlin. My deliveries to my house already come, most of them electric. And now it's more about, let's say, well, longer deliveries and then also the long haul traffic. And looking on the streets, well, I see more trucks in the streets than city buses. And in terms of carbon dioxide, now we're back to the environmental perspective, they have a huge impact that we can use if we change them to electric, if we get them carbon neutral. So this is an extremely important lever we're moving at the moment.
And when we're talking about these bigger trucks, these bigger lorries, it was long argued that, you know, hydrogen is really, and green hydrogen is the only way that we're going to be able to decarbonize this part of the logistics chain. But we're really seeing a shift in technology. You're saying that now electrification is likely the way to go.
I'm very, very careful with black and white.
Sure.
We used to, when we started with the bus electrification, we were so convinced we exactly knew how it should look like, that we were surprised when things developed differently, right? So we have learned a lot over the last 10, 15 years just by technological development and innovation. The kind of batteries that we have on city buses today enable basically standard operation, more or less, in most of the cases, with overnight charging only. This is something we did not envision back in the days. And with the trucks, it's similar as well. The technology is developing very, very fast. The battery chemistry, the battery sizes are improving, that I can go further and further on just one charge. And that enables more and more use cases. And that is really a driver for the success. I'm not saying that there are also other applications where maybe green hydrogen makes more sense, but the big difference is the infrastructure. We are already building charging for electric vehicles also for trucks. It's already there in the field. It's already coming in at scale. There are all these funding projects and there are all these developments ongoing. With hydrogen, it's still a little bit, let's say, again, the refilling stations need to be brought into the field. I need to generate green hydrogen in order to have it also carbon neutral. And this is all something that needs to be figured out. And it's not there yet where electrification is already at. So from that perspective, I believe that the majority of the use cases most likely would run electric. Nevertheless, there will be also other use cases where hydrogen really takes an important role.
Well, I've seen some of these electric bus charging stations. There's one, we're in Berlin, there's one on kind of the outskirts of northeast of Berlin, and it was absolutely vast facility. We're talking, you know, tens, maybe even hundreds of buses charging overnight at this one facility. That's not a trivial challenge when it comes to the grid infrastructure. So how do you overcome that challenge to get the kind of grid infrastructure, just get the power in to that many buses all charging at the same time?
No, you're absolutely right. It's let's say you can always find a solution to charge one vehicle. It's a different topic when you think about a fleet. If you think about a fleet of 100 buses or of more than that, 200 or 300 buses. And this is where you really need proper, let's say, first of all, proper planning, and then once everything is up and running and installed, proper operation. You want to make sure that the time you have in order to fulfill the schedule where the vehicles are on and the break times that remain, that you use those for your charging regime to the most optimum approach. Meaning a bus comes in at some point late at night or late in the afternoon and just leaves early in the morning. So I have time. I do not need to fill it up, or do not need to charge it up right away at the maximum power that's available. I can spread this out.
So this is smart charging,
exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So what in terms of smart charging, I have the system, I feed the system with my schedule. I have all my vehicles in and all the entry times and leave times. And then the system figures out, okay, which vehicle do I charge at what power, at what time? And what are the boundaries that I'm in? What's my maximum grid access that I have, my grid connection that I definitely do not want to exceed? When are maybe windows during the day when electricity is extra cheap or extra expensive? So where do I want to charge? What do I want to avoid? And then how can I smartly bring in my charging times and charging powers into these boundaries?
And so this is software that communicates with the e-charging hardware itself and then creates this kind of dynamic schedule that allows the buses to be ready when they need to, but also get kind of affordable energy and also don't crash the grid.
Absolutely, and it even goes one step further. If now one bus comes in late because there was a traffic jam or something did not go according plan, well, then the system can adapt. It can either adapt within the boundaries, or it can at least send a note to the operator and say, careful, you have a problem. That bus will not be fully charged when you need to have it. You need a different solution. Yeah.
Okay, so it can adjust intelligently to what's happening in the real world. In terms of the grid connection itself, though, sometimes that also needs some support, right? Because the grid in our cities wasn't built with having 5 megawatts of demand, whack, this bus charging station just installed in a couple of years' time. So I mentioned energy storage. So this is stationary batteries. They have a big role to play in terms of facilitating or strengthening or supporting this charging infrastructure. Is that right?
Absolutely. So it's let's say a staggered approach. When thinking about a bus depot or then later a logistics depot or whatever fleet charging I want to do, is first of all I need to understand what kind of vehicles do I have, how much energy do I need at what point in time, and then I can simulate and see, okay, will that work just with smart charging? Yes or no? Do I need grid extension? Do I need, or can I bring in battery storage to reduce grid extension or to work without grid extension? And how does a system then work? How big does the battery storage need to be? And how can I make sure that in the end my operation is safe, right? And that's what we can bring to the table to make things work and figure it out.
And also with these stationary batteries, I understand you can also play with them a little bit because they're also an asset on the grid, right? And they're not always going to be needed to support the bus charging. So there might be actually ancillary use cases for them to serve the grid as well.
Absolutely, that's the beauty, right? You can participate. So when the buses are out in the streets and you have this spare battery capacity that you can work with, you can participate in the energy balance market. That you actually feed back into the grid out of your battery storage, again, when there is negative prices for grid stability. And then you take it out at a later point in time to make sure that the battery is again at a certain level where you need it when all the buses are coming back and you need to feed those.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of different things to play with, to balance. And thankfully, I imagine software is playing an increasingly bigger role. Does artificial intelligence also play a role? Getting AI involved in balancing these complex situations?
Definitely. At the moment, the most, I would say AI by now is basically in all applications somehow involved. Definitely during, let's say, all the development and during the coding, where we at the moment see the most or one very important playing field for AI is actually in the service section, and they're the preventive maintenance. I can either just go by a fixed schedule, every 6 months I do my maintenance, or I can take a look at, well, how was the charger used? At what kind of power ratings was it used? Was it many on and off cycles or in a smooth way? And what kind of impact does it have on the system? Which parts should I really check for maintenance? Which other parts do I not really need to check? And that's where we're already bringing in AI and certain algorithms to help improve, to also, again, bring down cost and increase uptime and reliability.
Increase efficiency and keep learning as well, right? Because these are changing dynamics and the market is changing as well, market dynamics and pricing. So you need a kind of dynamic system and dynamic software to kind of balance all these different aspects. Now, the very big change in the market I mentioned right at the start, right? This is higher fossil fuel costs. We just keep seeing the oil price is high and is remaining there in quite a sticky fashion. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. When it comes to larger logistics companies, you gave me a sense for how closely they're looking at their energy costs. Do you feel that we're potentially moving towards a tipping point where there will be every logistics company worth its weight is going to be looking very closely at eMobility?
It's already happening at the moment. One of the big blocking points is still the cost of the vehicle. They are significantly more expensive than combustion engine vehicles. Nevertheless, it's still very closely needs to be considered. What kind of cost do I need to take into consideration? What kind of charging regime do I actually go for? Do I rather charge in the public because my trucks are out in the streets anyways? I do not have a depot at home where they park overnight. That's a whole different situation than when I say, no, my trucks just go from one hub to another hub, back and forth. And I will install my chargers right there. I have everything under control and I can optimize my energy cost. And there are so many different approaches and facets in logistics that makes it so interesting.
I imagine. And yeah, energy prices as well are always in flux. I imagine you can also play with these dynamic tariffs if you're a logistics operator as well, to try and charge when prices are low. And how does it compare then, public charging to private charging? Because I know as for passenger vehicles, there can be a huge amount of variation in terms of what kilowatt hour price you are paying. Is that still the case when it comes to these bigger consumers as well?
Well, it's always, it's interesting how it develops. Now with companies specifically focusing on truck charging, they're also coming up with specific truck charging tariffs, right? That the kilowatt hour comes at a price that is very attractive. Nevertheless, well, there's always some kind of service that is paid. So you have the electricity that goes into the grid that needs to be paid, and then there's a certain service on top that also has cost, has a price tag. So in the end, there is a certain price tag. Let it be, I don't know, 40, 50 kilowatts cent per kilowatt hour. On the other hand, well, if I have the electricity on my own premise, that I don't have the other part, right? Not that I need to pay somebody else. Now I need to see, okay, I have the kilowatt coming in at maybe, I don't know, 20, 25 cents per kilowatt hour. And now I need to invest my charging hardware, and now I need to operate my charging hardware. Am I still below or am I above what I can pay in the public? And that's the calculation that needs to be done.
It's a balancing act. And in terms of adopting e-mobility, then for these larger fleets of logistics vehicles, which themselves are larger vehicles, bigger batteries, more energy, I imagine it's not a decision that a company will make overnight, that this is perhaps something that they'll roll out in a staged way with their fleet.
I had quite some customers that would come into the dialogue and say, hey, I have a fleet, I want to fully electrify, let's do it. And then when we look into the details, are like, okay, well, maybe we start, let's say, a little bit smaller and then we scale. And that's something that usually makes a lot of sense, to start rather small with the pilot, to see how it works, to also, let's say, get a better understanding of risk, or of the least risk there is. There's not as much risk. Usually people are surprised that it does work very well. And then take it from there and scale. And if you have this in mind already during the initial planning phase, there are some aspects you can already consider in the very beginning that will help you later when you want to scale, that it's already prepared. So for example, when you need to increase your grid connection, maybe you want to already size for a bigger transformer, because transformers are expensive and they have a very long lead time. But if you have that in there, then it's easy to put more chargers at a later point in time. If I just have a very small system from the very beginning, well, then I need to bring in again another transformer, take some time, put in a lot of money, and then put in the chargers. So this is the kind of approach. If I have an idea where I want to be in a few years, then I can come up with a very good plan how to realize.
These are kind of 5-year plans, would you say? People are looking at to be able to electrify a significant amount of their fleet.
It's usually we talk about the year 2030. So this is the magic year that people like to plan for or plan against. And that used to be 5 years, now it's 4 years, 3.5.
Now, for passenger vehicles, you mentioned this kind of role that Tesla has played, and Elon Musk, say whatever you like about his other activities, Tesla really did play a decisive role in kind of making EVs sexy and cool, right? I think that I like to say that people before the Tesla came onto the market used to think that EVs were kind of fridges on wheels, right? They were not a cool thing, and then it became cool. In terms of logistics and fleets and these kind of things, do you think there's a potential kind of for an influence like that, or a moment that will really, a product that might be able to change the game or change expectations to some extent?
It's already there. So, I mean, this is exactly as you describe it, right? Electric vehicles in the past were very energy efficient, right?
That's a kind of nice way of saying a bit lame.
And exactly, with that came a lot of boredom. And then Tesla turned it around. They were not as energy efficient, but they were fun to drive. And the acceleration was just absolutely insane, right? At a price that was fair. And now when I talk to truck drivers, or also bus drivers, that drove electric for the first time, let it be bus or truck, they also have this smile, right? They're like, it's so nice. The acceleration is crazy. I don't have all these vibrations. I don't have all the noise. I just want to drive electric. And this is, on the other hand, I have logistics companies that are coming up to me and saying, hey, we have a problem with finding drivers. Electrification actually could help in that regard as well, to make the job more attractive, to exactly reduce all the noise, all the vibrations, and all, let's say, the stressful parts, or many of the stressful parts the job brings. So then the charging itself is also smooth and relaxed, and you do not need to worry too much about where do I charge next. Could be very beneficial.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that there's these auxiliary benefits as well that will come together and help logistics companies make this decision. And also that the technology is in place. Over many years, people have asked me, well, what's the breakthrough we need for electrification to happen, or for renewable energy to go mainstream? And my answer is always, we've got all we need. We just need to deploy. And you're saying that's also the case when it comes to logistics and electrification of transportation.
It's, let's say, a logistics company will start going electric if, mainly for economic reason. Either there is a law that requires them to go electric, or there's customers that ask them to go electric or they will not place the order, or it is cheaper to drive electric than with fossil. These are the main three drivers. If none of this is there, well, there are just very, very few enthusiasts that will still go electric only for, let's say, environmental reasons, right? But that's what we're looking at. And at the moment, again, this energy crisis reminds us, well, we are relying on fossil fuels and the pricing others put in our books. So that's where we are.
It's encouraging to see all of these factors kind of coming together. And of course, the environmental benefit is something that we can all benefit from. Reduced emissions in our streets, reduced pollution, and then also, of course, impacts on climate change. Marcel Rümenapf, thank you very much for your time here at the Siemens headquarters in Berlin, head of sales for eMobility Europe. Thanks for joining the Smartery podcast.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
This podcast is a Climate Copy production. Nicole Schäfer runs production and graphic design. Ina Gossen, Wolfgang Weicht, and Peggy Heta-Zille from Solar Promotion support on coordination and marketing. And Matthew Denny is our editor. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you found us. And you can get in touch with feedback, comments, or suggestions at podcast@thesmartery.com. If you're heading to Munich for the Smarter E exhibition this year, be sure to check out the various Siemens business units in halls B2, B3 and B5. The exhibition runs from Tuesdays to Thursday this year, June 23 to 25. And keep an eye out for our podcast team on site. I'm Jonathan Gifford, and thanks for joining me on another episode of the Smartery podcast.